Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. So, I collect a lot of vintage Beckett's. I have almost a complete run from 1984 to, well, say 2011, 2012. I use a lot of this stuff for the historical and financial data, and there's one year that I really don't have anything, and that is 1994. So I picked up the November 1994 issue of Beckett magazine, and as I said before, it's for the financial data. And I also think it's a really a good reminder of where the hobby was at when these things were very popular. Beckett today is, well, it's a shell of its former self. Um, I don't think a lot of people actually use Beckett's or Beckett magazine or their website. I have a very hard time with their website, and so I really don't use it. What I think Beckett actually did was kind of to standardize a lot of the things that we kind of take for granted today. I'm not going to go as far as say that Beckett is obsolete. I don't think that at all. They could be a lot better than what they are now. But the thing is, because PSA has been in the games for, well, a very long time, close to 30 years, if not 30 years or more, that the pricing data is really kind of confusing now. But prior to PSA or grading, most people I think used Beckett magazine or the Sport Americana, and because this is a 10-year anniversary issue, I really wanted something from 1994, and it was really kind of, for me, a memory um, going back to when I was a kid. And I actually stopped collecting modern cards in 1994 and went straight to vintage. And I think part of me actually thinks that I may actually have started collecting prior to 1994 with vintage, but there was some really interesting data in here that I wanted to share with you today. Now, when I actually go through this thing, um, I'm kind of surprised at some of the things that I'm seeing. The 1994 strike actually happened in August 12th of 1994, and it didn't lift until April 2nd or April 1st of 1995. Um, and that really got a lot of collectors like me very angry. And I found a really interesting article that I wanted to share with you as well. I actually wanted to find out what was going on in the hobby back then and in sports, and it's also a labor issue as well. Um, this is not the first labor strike. There were labor strikes in baseball going back to at least 1973, and then even prior to this, you can go back to the days of Dave Foltz back in, I'd say, like 1909, 1911, 1912 or so. And one thing that we kind of don't talk about much is labor in baseball, and just actually what that did for the league itself and the labor movement. And that, I guess, is a different story, but I always kind of find it very interesting. When you're talking about sports, the last thing that really comes to mind is the labor issues that were brought to the forefront, and how that relates to business. And so, with this one here, though, I think that there was a hockey strike in 1994, and that also really kind of is on the back of the 1994 baseball strike. However, hockey also has had a lot of labor issues, especially in the last 15, 20 years or so. But they'd always have strikes going back to uh, it's the early days pre National Hockey League. Um, and so they're pretty famous for it. Now, again, like I said, baseball was pretty good about not striking. There was a strike by the Tigers in 1912, and I think it really didn't last very long, maybe a day or a week or something like that. They fielded a team of what they called scabs uh, for at least one game, and that actually was more to do with Ty Cobb being ejected from a game, and I'm not entirely sure, but that may have been the game where Ty Cobb went in the stands and beat up a disabled fan who had been well, trashing his mother. So um, the hobby in 1994 is obviously it's a lot different than it is today, but you could really kind of see that there was something going on in the hobby, um, a downturn, if you will, prior to 1994, in fact. And I'm going to actually talk about this in this article I found. You can definitely make the connections between hockey, what's going on in hockey and in baseball, and it's all kind of like gathering in one spot in the hobby. And because of all the prices that we're seeing here, which I did actually, this is kind of crazy, but I went through this entire magazine and I collected all the data, the up arrows and the down arrows, or down arrows and the up arrows, and I compiled all that together to kind of get a clearer picture of what's going on in the hobby. Now, I don't have any other data from, say, August or September of 1994 to see exactly what is taking place because I mean the thing is when Beckett compiled all their financial data, say November, that's actually a month prior. So you're looking at September's data, and so this is really interesting stuff that I think you're going to really enjoy. And obviously, I want your guys' input on this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this after I deliver this article. So here we go. This is from the Pantograph, December 31st, 1992, Bloomington, Illinois. Card collecting boom goes bust as business oversaturated by Scripps Howard News Service. In the late 1950s, a youngster would walk into the corner store, put down a nickel, and get a wax package with 5 baseball cards and a flat stick of pale pink gum. It was a time when the gum was almost as valued as the cards. The card might get stuffed in a back pocket to be traded for candy or used as a noisemaker in bicycle spokes or become a player in a make-believe game where a double six roll of the dice was a home run, or it might get jammed into a shoebox with dozens of other cards. Back pockets have given way to plastic cases. Shoeboxes have been replaced by safe deposit boxes and tops. The lone card manufacturer of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s now vies in a marketplace with companies such as Score, Don Russ, Upper Deck, Flair, Action Packed, Pro Set, and Pacific. Even the gum is gone. Topps, the lone company to include gum in its cards, pulled the candy insert last year after too many collectors complained that gum could discolor valuable cards. There is, it seems, only one common thread linking the late 1950s with the present. The people spending most of the money today are the same ones who plunked down pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters for cards more than 30 years ago. The baby boomers of the 1950s have grown up and they've taken their hobby with them. It's guys rediscovering their youth, said Bill Mueller, owner of Silver Reef Collectibles in Schaumburg. Schaumburg. I'm not sure where that is, but well, you guys probably could let me know. Best estimate among card dealers is that 80% of the money being spent on cards today comes from adults between 30 and 55. Collectors number in the millions. One card company's research shows that there are approximately 15 million collectors of baseball cards, 4 million for football, 3 million for basketball, and 2 million for hockey. What was once a young boy's hobby is now a $1 billion a year retail business beset by problems. The trading card industry has become oversaturated with cards, card companies, and dealers. This winter, more than 20 companies are producing football cards. Four of the five major baseball card companies produce a variety of different sets under names such as Leaf, Ultra, Fleer, Stadium Club, and Pinnacle. Quote, it's like nuclear war when the Russians and Americans had the power to kill each other 14 times over, unquote, said Kit Kilfer, editor of Baseball Cards magazine. It's definitely trading card sensory overload. The oversaturation has led to a new era in sports card business. Card sales continue to increase on an annual basis, but a shakeout in the industry has begun, and most experts say it is impossible to predict which companies will survive over the crowded marketplace. One of the largest companies, ProSet, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Upper Deck, which set the current standard by introducing premium cards in 1989, recently underwent massive reorganization. Skybox has trimmed three-quarters of its staff the past 3 years and reports losses of 80 million in 1991. Quote, it's definitely come to the point where companies are going to start falling out, said Tucker Freeman Smith, editor of Tough Stuff, a collectible magazine. It's a natural progression, and it's certainly going to be survival of the fittest. The problems are affecting collectors as well. The thinking of the mid 1980s that cards continually would increase in value. Overproduction of cards beginning in the late 1980s actually has led to annual decreases in the price of some new cards. Industry sources estimate 100,000 cards were printed of each baseball player in 1960, 250,000 cards per player in 1975, and 5 to 6 million cards per player per company in 1990. Dealers and wholesalers have been left literally holding the cards. According to Walt Brunner, owner of Sports Card Center in Bloomington, Minnesota, he has a wholesaler willing to sell him unopened boxes of 1988 and 1989 Topps and Donruss baseball wax packs for $7. The 1987 Topps box will sell for $25 and a Donruss for $57. A box of 1985 Topps sells for $250 and Donruss for $325. What does that tell you? Brunner said. It tells you they made a ton of cards starting in 1988. Almost everyone believes the market for older baseball cards pre 1975, according to many, will remain strong. A random sampling of prices in mint or near mint condition from the November issue of Beckett's Price Guide, 1955 Roberto Clemente rookie card, 1,550; 1959 Bob Gibson rookie card, 410; 1960 Mickey Mantle, 390. On a more moderate scale, 1963 Eddie Matthews, $22; 1965 Willie Stargell, $32; and 1969 Harmon Killebrew, 21. New cards, the hobby has changed so dramatically in the past 3 years that it's virtually impossible to predict which cards will hold their value. Some say children are being misled when they are told cards will continue to escalate in value. It's hype, said Tough Stuff editor Smith. Like a rap singer says, don't believe the hype. Kids and all collectors are told to buy Ken Griffey Jr. Now, for $1, and the future he'll be worth what a Mickey Mantle card is now. That's absurd. You're talking about apples and oranges because there's going to be 5 to 6 million of that Griffey card on the market. Industry experts say the number of collectors grows annually because of children, but the hobby also has grown increasingly expensive the past 4 years, which might price some children out of the marketplace. As late as 1988, Donruss, Flair, Score, and Topps were almost exclusively producing sub 50-cent pack of basic cards. Now only Topps and Score produce 55-cent packs. The purchasing habits of consumers changed in 1989 when Upper Deck became the first company to print a so-called premium card. The price was $1, double the existing scale. People laughed at Upper Deck, Brenner said. They said customers will never pay $1 to $1.50 for a pack of cards. Well, guess what happened? The customers jumped at Upper Deck's high gloss appearance, and the other major companies quickly jumped into the premium card business. The collecting craze got even more muddled in 1992, which will be remembered as the year of the subsets and insert cards. The hottest baseball collectibles this year are the sets within each set, marked by glitzy borders and catchy names such as Donruss Kings, the 27 set of star caliber players, Leaf Gold Rookies, 24 cards, Flair All-Star Inserts, again 24 cards, Flair Ultra Award Winners, 25, Ultra All Rookies, 10, Stadium Club Members Choice, 20, Team Pinnacle, 12, Pinnacle Rookie Idols, 18, Pinnacle Slugfest, 15, and Pinnacle Team 2000, 80 cards. Even Upper Deck, the only company producing just one basic set, has Home Run Heroes, 26 cards, Scouting Report, 25 cards, and Ted Williams Best, 20 cards. It results in sensory overload for young children, many of whom have a difficult time deciding what type of card they would like to collect. Premium packs, basics, packs with hot subsets, or packs with the best inserts. I think children are confused, said Dave Mona, a local card and memorabilia dealer. They're left to chase new products all the time. The word gets out that somebody's got a new product, and then 2 weeks later, something else is hot and the other one is literally out. The prices of subsets and insert cards stamp them as best bets among collectibles, but the estimated worth of subsets could be deceiving, according to Theo Chen, price guide analyst for Beckett Baseball Card Monthly. Quote, there's some positives and negatives associated with the inserts, Chen said. The positives are that it's fun to open a pack with the potential for finding a good card. The main negative is that it sort of dilutes the value of regular cards. Another negative is that most insert sets don't retain their immediate value over the long run. It cools off eventually. What happens to an industry that appeared to have no limit to its growth just a couple of years ago? The growth of the sports card industry in the 1980s coincided with the demise of Topps' monopoly of the industry in 1980 when Topps settled an antitrust suit with Flair Corp over Topps' heretofore exclusive deal with Major League Baseball. Flair and Donruss hit the market in 1981, and the explosion was on. For years, it appeared the public couldn't get enough new cards. In 1980, when Topps was the only major player in the marketplace, its retail sales were between 30 and 40 million. In 1990, the retail sales for trading cards from the five major companies, Topps, Donruss, Flair, Upper Deck, and Score, totaled almost 1 billion. The public's appetite was fueled by steady price increases for older baseball cards, which have remained the biggest sellers among sports trading cards. During the 1980s, the value of some older cards showed annual percentage increases greater than the blue chip stocks. The prices paid for some cards was downright stunning. A 1910 Honus Wagner card was sold at a Sotheby's auction for $451,000 to Los Angeles Kings owner Bruce McNall and superstar Wayne Gretzky. Topps 1952 Mantle card reportedly has sold for as much as $65,000. As prices skyrocketed and interest increased, card companies opened the presses, printing more and more cards to feed what appeared to be an insatiable appetite. By the late 1980s, supply had far outdistanced demand for most cards. Oversaturation became the hobby's byword. Dealers are angered because card companies have refused to release information on the numbers of cards produced each year. That's a critical problem in the investment sector of the card business, where values are directly related to quantity. The new card business is contracting, said Joshua Evans of Leland's Memorabilia in New York. What's happened is that too much of the product has been created and the market is oversaturated. Dealers bought boxes of cards for X amount of dollars, and now they're only worth 50% of X. I know of cases selling for $1,500 a few years ago, and they're now $100. Some industry experts say the card companies should not shoulder all the blame for the bust in the market. The boom time of the quick 1980s brought get rich quick dealers into the game. Those dealers figured that the more cards they were able to order from card companies, the more profit they would make. They became part of a vicious cycle. Quote, you had too many dealers entering the market with no love of sports, said Chen, whose Beckett prices are considered the standard of the industry. Pretty soon you had too many dealers, too many cards, too many sets. The shakeout is taking place among wholesalers and dealers at the local level as well. Some national estimates say half the dealers working in 1990 eventually will be forced out of business, but new dealers continue to enter the marketplace. It's like any other business now, Brunner said. If you're going to be successful, you have to know what you're doing. You can't just put out cards anymore and expect to get rich. ProSet spokesman Eric Herskind defends overproduction mistakes, saying companies simply were trying to find the upper limits of a market that had shown steady growth. Quote, our stats show us that 80% of households don't have a card collector in them, so there was an enormous amount of opportunity, Erskine said. But Proset was forced to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy precisely because it printed too many cards. Proset's financial problems can be traced to the return of thousands of unsold boxes from retail outlets. Erskine said Proset will change the industry. It's among the first card companies to announce production numbers. This year, the company will produce 8,000 numbered hockey cases. Last year, Proset released roughly 80,000 cases. We'll just have to see what the industry bears, Herskine said. At the end of the year, we'll have a better idea. So this is like kind of really interesting to me. I did pick up a couple of cards from this time recently, the Pro Set, in fact. So and this is Brett Hull. This is from 1990. It is autographed. I really enjoyed watching Brett Hull play. Whenever he played the Bruins or, in my case, the Hartford Whalers. My dad actually got me into watching hockey, and whenever the Bruins weren't on, I'd be able to watch the Hartford Whalers, and I do love the Whale. I really do kind of wish that they'd come back to Hartford. Originally, Hartford Whalers were a Boston team until about 1979 or so, and so I was happy to add this particular card to my set. I actually do have another Brett Hall card coming, and I was hoping that would be autographed, but I really like the design, and it is Upper Deck Heroes. And then obviously Sergei Fedorov's rookie. Both of these cards are really cheap, and the funny thing is this is really my introduction to hockey cards via my cousin, who I had spoken to about this quite recently, and he said, "Man, I'm really sorry I got you into this set." He's like, "I just didn't know, or we didn't know that these cards wouldn't be worth anything," and that's quite all right, cousin, because I learned a lot from you, in fact, by collecting this set, and I learned a lot about hockey and the players. So I did have a lot of fun collecting the set. I completed, I think, the majority of the set. I don't remember completing the entire set. I think eventually that set was destroyed, and so I had no more pro set. But I had a lot of fun. I had a blast collecting pro set cards, even though they're not worth anything. It's still a great memory for me. And I think what the person in the article had alluded to was that it collecting cards for baby boomers or my dad's generation was a specific memory for them. It's why they collected cards, uh, once they got back into the hobby after either having children or starting a new career or coming out of college or whatever the case may be. And so that is actually universal to every generation, as I'm finding out, not just my generation, which is why at my age, I'm going back to collecting these particular cards and still playing video games. And the funny thing is, it's different from this, but I kind of forgot how difficult Nintendo games were. So I mentioned this because every generation is different. They come with their own set of values and their own worries and their own hopes and fears. And this is also true with card collectors. You don't hear a whole lot about Gen X these days compared to millennials or Generation Z, but every generation comes to the hobby differently. They learn differently, they collect differently, and this is really kind of what we're seeing with this Beckett as well. Beckett magazine in general, I think, is that the generations that have come after mine are not really into Beckett at all. Beckett really, I don't think, unfortunately, they don't have the same presence uh, or lasting presence that my generation has. And if that makes any sense to you guys, even PSA magazine or SMR. I don't know if too many collectors are actually reading that magazine, and I don't really know how influential it was compared to Beckett. Some of these card companies are no longer around today, specifically, I think, because of the overproduction, as they say. As it appears, the downturn in the hobby in 1994 wasn't as a direct result of the 1994 baseball strike. That was a huge portion of it. It looks like this was kind of building prior to this. You can go back at least until 1991, 1992, as this article suggests. This is actually in December of 1992, but it continued throughout 1993, and then by 1994, you had a major strike in baseball, and it was precipitated by what was going on in hockey. And at the time, I remember talking to my cousin about this too, that he had said that there was a hockey strike, if you will, a very short one, about 10 days in I think April of 1992. I think I'm not entirely sure that's the correct date, but as memory does not serve me in the 1990s because I don't remember a whole lot about the 90s, which I'm not really going to get into in this video as to why that may be. Take your guess. But then there was a lot of strife in hockey as well throughout. I think was it '93, and then by 1994 there was another strike in hockey, and then that was actually I think maybe after. So that was in 1994 through 1995 at the same time as baseball. But what really kind of got me here was just going through the numbers from this baseball Beckett, and uh, it looked like it wasn't just the modern cards of the day, but they did take a huge hit. What really surprised me was the vintage took a massive hit as well. So like everything through the hobby, and from what I've heard and reading through the press was that the hobby in about 1995 through 1998, it took a 40% nosedive in prices, which would have been great if you wanted to get into vintage like I did. And I do remember that when I was 14 years old when the strike happened, and I started collecting vintage, and vintage was actually pretty cheap. It was all the way up through I'd say maybe 2016, 2017, 2018, and then you started to see everything kind of creep up and maybe mid to late 2019, and then by 2020 and 2021 things just got really out of control, and now they're kind of coming back down to earth. um, I just had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine who was looking over my card collection, and I had mentioned to him that if I had to start my vintage collection over again today, if there was unfortunately a robbery or a fire or something like that, there's no way that I would be able to afford the cards that I have in my collection because the prices are just so out of control. And I think uh, going back to this Beckett here, that when I'm going through some of the prices, that they are inflated, and this really is. You could probably make a good argument that the prices are inflated because of investors, and investors at the time in say the mid 1980s up until maybe 1993 or so. um, they again they didn't really know the players, they didn't know anything about the game, which is kind of dumb. To tell you the truth, why would you get into any investment if you don't know anything about it? Um, but that's just me. What they were really kind of saying is the greenback, the dollar, and a guy like Mr. Mint Rosen, he was not a collector at all. He just saw green, and he's got no appreciation for it, and so there's a lot of guys like Mr. Mint, and I'm not blaming Mr. Mint at all. I knew him for a long time, but I think he was. I hate to say it, he may have been part of the problem here. When I'm looking through this Beckett though, the one thing that really kind of stands out to me, as I showed you in that graph, or my version of a graph anyway, uh, is is that the vintage has really kind of taken a severe nosedive, and I'm now kind of seeing more of why that happened, and it because of the people who were collecting them for the most part. It wasn't kids like me. Now, like again, I was 14 years old when I was collecting vintage, just starting out, and you don't really see a whole lot of junior high kids or high school kids collecting vintage. Maybe you do now, but I kind of doubt that. So this was all my father's generation. Those guys, who were collecting the vintage because it was players that they saw growing up. Now, I never saw any of the guys back here playing, contrary to popular belief, but I do remember prior to the pandemic. Wow, that was amazing. Anyway, so I did just pick up this 59 Jim Brown, and it was still fairly affordable, a little more on the expensive side. But at some point, you could have picked this card up for 40 bucks, and it is the second year. I really enjoy this card. Jim Brown has just passed away, uh, and I'm not sure where football players go when they pass away. Unlike baseball players who walk into a field of dreams or a cornfield, me having family in Iowa, I hope I never end up going into a cornfield. They're just scary. Plus, if you haven't seen Signs, the movie with the aliens, not a good scene. So I stay away from cornfields. Uh, this is a card I've always wanted to add to my collection, and it has gained in price quite recently, and even before Jim Brown has passed. But I'll show you the back of it too. I'm not a big fan of the backs of these cards, but I do love the design, and I did a pretty lengthy article on it, which Dakota from Sports Cards Anonymous has rightfully said that I should have added Jim Brown to that article. I may, in fact, actually not redo the article, but add Jim Brown at some point. uh, it's just sorry, it just slipped my mind. I was interested in the periphery, if you will, of the set and some of the other players as well. I'm the kind of guy that I don't really like to talk about superstar players. There are so many ball players, whether it be baseball, basketball, hockey, golf, tennis, badminton. I don't even know if they have badminton teams, but there are certain players that I like to talk about, which I feel are not talked about enough, and kind of like all the air is like sucked out of the room when you start talking about Jim Brown or Mickey Mantle or Ted Williams or Joe DiMaggio. So that's just me, and I'm trying to change my ways on that. But getting back to this, uh, when I'm looking at this particular Beckett from November of 1994, I was expecting something a little bit different than what I saw. And I didn't expect to see so many vintage cards take a nosedive. And it was just a lot of them. Um, for example, um, Satchel Paige rookie short print. That's in the 48 leaf. That is a $2,000 card going down. And a lot of these leaf from 48, they're, Tommy Heinrich, 425. Alvin Dark, rookie, that is a short print. That's 400. Um, Slaughter, 700. But then you start getting into the 48 Bowman, and you know Bob Elliott is number one card in that set. It's a rookie, and they say it's condition sensitive. Well, because it is the first card in the set. However, that was $45 to $90 and going down. That is an easy card to find. It's not difficult. I see it a lot. Uh, so there are cards here that are overvalued, obviously, and there's a lot of prices that are going down. I was just really surprised to see how many cards, vintage wise, have gone up, and which ones have gone down. And there's more cards that have gone down for vintage, which a lot of people say is really a better way to go. I think what they're talking about is that you're going to make probably more money off of vintage in the long run. It's slow and steady, and you may increase a little bit of money here and there, but again, it's not like modern cards where a lot of the modern cards you can make a lot of money, but on the other hand, you can lose your shirt. And I particularly like this shirt, so I don't want to lose it. Um, you can make a lot of money off of modern stuff, and a lot of collectors have sold modern to get into vintage, which I think is actually a very smart idea. I would do that, in fact, because I don't have any feeling on most of the modern cards today. In fact, I don't really watch sports, so I do watch a lot of vintage sports, but I don't know any of the players today, and I've told you guys about this. One of the last shows that I went to, aside from the Altman show, which I do owe you guys a video on. It's just that's another story. But I walked into this show near me, and it was all modern, and I was lost. There was so many cards. I had, again, what they said in this article, sensory overload. That is, if it was true then, it's definitely true now. I didn't know anything about any of these cards. They were bright, flashy, glimmery, and they're like jewel-like. There was so many autographs that I couldn't keep track of anything, and I got so overwhelmed that I left. And well, I did come back maybe 2 or 3 weeks later to pick up a specific card, which I'll talk about in another video. But I was just so overwhelmed by all the product there, and it seems like the hobby has really not paid attention to its history, and it's a different junk wax era. It's junk wax, obviously. It's just a different spin on an old game, and we have a lot of collectors, younger collectors, that don't remember this period of time that I'm talking about today, in the mid to late 1980s and 1990s, and that's kind of concerning to me because we are repeating it. I think that we're not really doing a good job of teaching hobby history, because if we did, we probably wouldn't be seeing some of the stuff that's happening today. It's already happened, 25, 30 years ago. And what have we learned? I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to like be a jerk about this, and I'm not trying to badmouth, because the hobby has done really great things for me personally. I met a lot of awesome people through the hobby, and I've gained a lot of knowledge, and not just through sports cards, but through everything from economics to science to art to the law. And I want to kind of teach that to you guys as well. So um, I think that this is absolutely fascinating. What I thought was also interesting too, just going through this particular magazine, was that it has a how to use listing, and it says, again, it is only a guide. What's listed, uh, what do the arrows mean, what do the columns mean, and everything is kind of like broken down here, which I think is interesting. And then the legend, and what a rookie is, and that's always that's always up for debate, I guess. This guide, this Beckett Price guide, was a huge part of my childhood, and it brings back a lot of great memories for me. Now, I know, as I said before, Beckett really has kind of taken a nosedive. I guess people don't really pay too much attention to it, but there's no you don't have people who are um, kind of agreeing on anything today, not even price. It's really difficult for a guy like me who to walk into a card show and know what a good price is, because again, we don't have standards anymore, at least it seems, in the hobby, except for graded cards such as this. But the problem is that you have a lot more raw cards like this than graded cards, and why you would have two sets of grading standards, or better yet, two values for the same card, is something I don't understand, and I probably never will. And for the most part, you don't see that in any other industry that I'm aware of, even in other hobbies. Maybe you do, like the coin industry, but I wouldn't get into coins today. I wouldn't even have gotten into coins 10, 15 years ago either. That's a mess in itself. And there was a coin grading scandal back in the mid to late 1980s, which is one of the reasons why PSA, or Collectors Universe, had to look for another venue, which they found in sports cards, because they were in trouble. And so that led to some fraud in about 1991, when they said, or the article was talking about the Gretzky McNow Wagner, which was trimmed twice. And there's a really great book about that called The Card, with Terry Thompson and Terry O'Keefe. I really wish that they would update that book, but the book is great. And then, there's obviously questions that I have personally about what happened, especially afterwards. And anyway, that's, I guess, a different story. But um, what I think this did really well was have a condition guide and a centering guide as well, which you can see right here. And it was pretty accurate. In fact, I'd like to see the hobby get back to something like this, some standards at least. Everybody in my generation, we knew what these cards were valued at, for the most part. We know the um, the conditions, and here's the other thing that a lot of people don't talk about. This condition guide was actually not invented by Jim Beckett. I think he may have improved on it, but this was actually a guide, say what near mint was, or good, or excellent mint, and the centering as well. The centering guide here, those were all from the 1981 Baseball Cards magazine, and Jim Beckett just kind of, as I said, improved on it, or took it as his own. So people think that it's his thing, and it wasn't. This is actually something that was prior to Beckett Monthly, that came out in '84. One of the things that we really don't take into consideration is the inflation rate of a lot of the cards and the prices that we're seeing in these price guides. And so when I'm looking at this 1969 Topps Nolan Ryan here for 550, the actual inflation rate, what this card would actually have cost you in 19, was it 1994? It's been a long day, let me tell you. I do have an inflation calculator here ever since I turned into a nerd. That same Nolan Ryan card would actually cost you $1,125.84. So just because a card here is selling for say 350 as the Hank Aaron in the 55 top set is that doesn't mean that you're gonna actually buy it for 350. You shouldn't, in fact. You have to have certain wiggle room, if you will, and the dealer needs to cover his costs, because again, this is prior to uh, eBay. So there's stores involved, and the costs could be everything from property value, property taxes, I should say, or electricity, or whatever the case may be. So from what I remember, actually, the 225 value is what you could expect to sell the card for, and I'm not entirely sure. I think that's what it was, or still is. Um, I really would never pay full book for any card. I don't think I ever have. It's been very rare, in fact, that I had even considered. Now, if it's a $10 card, I'm not going to care. But in the case of, say, um, the Sandy Koufax here, the 56, which is $300, I'm not paying $300 for that card, even today. I'm not. A lot of cards today are really overinflated too, even vintage, because you have a lot of collectors, newer collectors, who are getting into vintage, and they don't really know what they're doing. And they see the card and they're like, I'm gonna buy this card, but they might not know if it's rare or not, or if it's a good deal or not, because as I said before, that there's no real standards and value anymore, unlike there was when we had Beckett. And so this is one of the reasons why a lot of these cards uh, are inflated or were inflated. And the pandemic is a little bit different for different reasons. I guess that's I don't really want to get into, to tell you the truth. Uh, Unfortunately, there's a lot of politics involved in that one, which I'm not a big fan of politics of any kind. I try to avoid it unless it's, well, if it's vintage, right? So it's a different story here. I see a lot of, like, I guess, politics and sports, which was one of the reasons why we had a hockey lockout a couple of times. And the biggest one that I remember was 2005, and that really affected a lot of um, er, basically other businesses associated with hockey, which really bothered a lot of people that were affected. But a lot of people were affected by this, not just the sports franchises or the players or the owners. And the same, I think, is true with baseball during the 1994 strike as well. Affected a lot of people, and um, so it's kind of like a chain, right? But again, guys, I I really wanted to present this to you, and I'm gonna have more stuff on this. I think it's really fascinating. The one thing that I'm not even seeing in this Beckett is any kind of a mention of a strike whatsoever. They're whitewashing everything. It looks like they're not really doing a good service with the news here, because there's really nothing. It's like every other day, right? Um, and so 20, 30 years later, you're like, what what was going on, right? Um, you get a really good sense of what is happening in sports or baseball, but they're not mentioning the biggest thing that went on in 1994, which was the strike. There's an article here on Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas leads a select group of players who have at one time or another reached what mere commons only dream of, the top hot list. And I'll probably go through this list in another time, but it's kind of interesting. Um, Greg Jeffries is on this list. Obviously, Ken Griffey Jr., one of my favorite ball players. Roger Clemens, Don Mattingly, and again, Don Mattingly, he probably should be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of those guys whose cards were really counterfeited in the 1980s. You also have Frank Thomas, Jose Canseco, Doc Gooden, Mark McGuire, Will Clark, the aforementioned Don Mattingly, Bo Jackson, Eric Davis, Mike Greenwell, Dave Justice. These guys are not being collected today, and this is only 30 years ago or close to it. What we are collecting today, as far as modern goes, this is a good representation. It's what going to happen 20 to 30 years from now. The players, and I'm not telling you guys not to collect modern cards. Collect what you love. Um, but just go into it knowing that the cards that you're collecting today will not be collected by future generations. And this is exactly the point that this magazine is making. The other generations right below me, they're not collecting the cards from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s. Again, my generation is collecting the cards from the 1980s because we remember these players. I remember these players: Andre Dawson, David Cohn, Roger Clemens. I saw plenty of the cards here too, and really, I don't think anyone's collecting either. And Flair Flair, which I'm going to get into in another video, what's happening to a lot of these cards from the 1990s and maybe early 2000s. They're not holding the test of time, if you will, right? There's something really different about the Flair Flair set, which I remember collecting in little packages, boxes, if you will. But the coating on these cards have not held up well at all. And a lot of collectors are saying that when they're stacking these cards, they're finding like bricks and it's just destroying the cards. And so that high gloss finish that they're putting on these cards just ruined the card in the long run. And you could say the same thing about the autographs as well. For the most part, the Sharpie has not held up either, especially the I guess the sticker auto. um, a lot of collectors like the on card auto as well, and I do too. But only time will tell, really. Uh, what happens to cards from the 1990s. Obviously, a lot of them are just. I hate to say it, but a lot of them are kind of garbage. I forgot most of the stuff because I after '94, I stopped collecting modern stuff, and so I didn't really see a whole lot of the stuff. And it's again, it's one of the reasons why I'm going back and kind of collecting a little bit of this stuff. The this is really cool too. There is a 1993 studio set which I really enjoyed that set, and the 1994 as well because it was something that you didn't really see often. And the insights of the ball players that they show on the back of these cards was really something that was very interesting as well, and I did enjoy that. But and that would probably be a set that I would consider in the future. And again, the 1993 Upper Deck SP baseball set, um, that was a first too, primarily because of the photography. A lot of the photography and the production of these cards was brand new. There's nothing before it. It was a very high level that you haven't seen on, say, something like this or any cards that I have here in the back. At the same time, though, it's destroying the cards. At least I think so. And so, again, only time will tell what cards remain and what don't. Um, 92 Stadium Club, I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Obviously, when I'm looking at the modern cards here in this Beckett, and there's a lot more cards that have gone down in price. But these prices, it's not monumental. These are not monumental price shifts. They're like 50 cents here, 25 cents there. And so there's a lot more of this stuff. But again, these are active players um, and not vintage players. But what did surprise me was that there were, I think, a lot more vintage players or cards that were going down in value, which is something I don't think you see often, especially in large groupings like this. Again, you do see between the 1991 Beckett, which I posted up here, the prices in that one, or the statistics, as I should say, the statistics in the 1991 Beckett are pretty normal. And then so you can see a huge shift there between what's going on in 1991 and definitely in 1994. And then a lot of people have said too that the prices really didn't come back to normal for a lot of the stuff until about 1998 or so. So the 1994 baseball strike took about 5 years for the hobby to recover, and it was also the fact that you had a lot of companies that had gone under. And so like you're seeing that in like 1995, 1996, 1997, and 98. And then after that, there's kind of a quiet period until 2005, 2006, when you have all these companies go to court over contractual disputes with ball players and fans over redemptions. And that's going to be another video at some point as well. So, guys, again, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it as always. I'm going to have more of these videos out there because I think the history is really important for this time in the hobby. And I think that we're kind of um, doing this all over again and not really kind of teaching other generations about our hobby history, which is really the reason for what I do, aside from going down memory lane here. So, guys, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. And let me know what you think about any of this stuff. I always love to hear what you have to say, and I always try to respond as much as possible. So I will talk to you later. Bye.